Welcome to the Imperfect Dads Podcast. This is your host, Devin. We believe dads care deeply about their family and kids, but they don't always have a space to discuss what their life looks like. Our podcast is a space for dads to discuss the ups and downs of fatherhood and how they feel like they're holding it together or how they're not. Thank you for joining us for this episode. This podcast is part of the Never a Face Network. Make sure to follow them on Instagram or go to the website neverafacenetwork.com. On this episode, we have on Jeremy from the Safe and Sound podcast. We talked about trying to play guitar when you have kids, how YouTube has changed learning things, when your younger kid wants to do the same thing as your older kid, his life as a therapist, how being a therapist is different when it's your own kids, taking the time to explain things to your kids, and his podcast, Safe and Sound, where he talks to musicians about mental health and music. And also just like one more thing.
Dad, just start the episode.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
Jeremy, welcome to episode.
Let's
talk about that bass behind you.
Yeah. This thing is a POS, man. I literally, I picked it up just because I do some recording from time to time for my own music. And I was like, I'm recording everything. You know, I use Logic. And so I have a drum, like, you know, I just use the drummer. Don't judge me. I use the drummer on there. And so I picked this thing up and it was like $100. It's a Squire, but the thing was so janky. It's still really janky. I had to go in and solder some of the pots and things like that. And so it's still like I can kind of flex the pick guard on it. It still kind of comes off. So yeah, it's an old crappy Squire. And then I have, I've got this like, this has been mine for a really long time, but I have a Fender.
Yeah.
Notice the serial number scratched off.
Yeah.
It was a deluxe, Stratocaster custom deluxe that a friend of mine had worked on. And so I've had that for a really, really long time. And somewhere buzzing around, I have an older Breedlove.
Okay.
I am not the music instrument person in the family. My brother is like, he's crazy. He runs a website / tutorial site called Worship Artistry.
Okay.
That takes like Christian music songs.
Okay.
And they do like full blown tutorials. Bass, guitar, tonage.
Okay.
All of that stuff.
Even tonage?
Yeah, they'll go through pedal, they'll go through tonage, just how to dial that stuff kind of in. And it's pretty freaking comprehensive on a lot of things. So it's impressive. So he's the one who has like a rack of guitars and stuff like that. And I'm like, I have this thing.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I
don't have a lot of time.
Right, yeah. I have a friend who's in Nashville, and I think he's been he did the road work for a while. I think they needed studio work for a long time. He still does studio work, but now he has like a whole YouTube series that's kind of like, hey man, here's how you play like a studio musician. And like that whole world is like a revenue stream and a community. It's something that I still like. I grew up playing guitar by like looking up tabs. Like I've not like I'm not like looking up like, hey, what's their exact strumming pattern? I'm like, just tell me the correct notes and I want to mess with it. And I'm good.
Right. I think there's something.
Crazy.
I think there's something that like, we're in a brave new world when it comes to that. It's really awesome. But at the same time, I think there's something kind of cool being able to kind of figure it out by yourself and not, you can get too in the weeds. I think of like, it depends on your learning style too, right? Yeah. Videos, not my learning style. I need to learn how to, by doing, type of thing.
Well, because like, I also understand like the obsession of like, so I play mostly, if I play semi-hollow body Telecaster is my go-to. And I have like a Fender 212R, like just front man, like really simple, very reverby amp. And that's because I used to listen to a band called The Good Life, which is the side project of Tim Kasher from Cursive. And whenever I'd watch him play, he would always play semi-hollow body Telecaster for a while. So I was like, oh, that's the guitar I want. And like, that was the extent of how deep into that I got, where I feel like some people now are like, all right, here's my favorite guitars. What's the guitar? What's the amp? What's the pedals? What's everything? And I'm just like, no, man, just give me the guitar, and I bet I can figure it out.
Yeah,
or give me some weird imitation of what that is. So
yeah, my brother has his midlife crisis, so to speak. Like, I think it's like a 1940 42 or 45 Gibson acoustic.
Okay, yeah.
It was like 5 grand. And my sister-in-law was like, if this is the extent of your midlife crisis,
That's not
like,
bad.
we're good.
That's
We're
not bad,
good.
you know?
Type of thing. But that thing is beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you can tell the tone as soon as you pick it up. You're like, okay, I see the difference
Yeah.
here and
I
there.
stay away from pedals. I like because I just try to do whatever the presets and the guitar are because I just play around the house. I'm not
Yeah.
out playing or anything because I know the second I find a reverb pedal I like, the second I start getting into distortion pedals, there goes 5 grand. There, then
Right.
I look up and I'm hiding credit card statements for my wife. You know,
Right.
like
Right.
it.
Exactly.
That's where it
Yeah.
comes to.
Yeah. I was talking to Jake Schneider and
Yeah. Oh,
we
dude,
were
his
talking
pedal.
about,
Oh, dude. Yeah.
yeah. And he was like, when I quit, he's like, I sold all that stuff. Like all that stuff was gone. And then when we
Yeah.
went back on tour, he's like, I bought it all back again. And he was like, there's like thousands of dollars equipment for like one tour. It's like an obsession. It's like an
Yeah.
addict.
It is.
So
It is.
I hear you.
Which is fun to think about pedals because, like, now that I have 3 kids, as I was telling you beforehand. And, like, dude, if I plug in my guitar and play at all within a month, it's a rarity. Like, if I am playing music, I'm either playing an acoustic while the kids put their hands on the guitar strings and are like, no
Yeah.
play, or I'm plugging in, the kids are like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Right. Right. I come in and my guitar is completely detuned. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so who was in here? And
Yeah.
like my son will just be like sneaking away.
And you're
Right,
like,
dude.
this is why I'm not letting the dream of playing guitar die.
What has
But
dad told you about touching my guitar?
exactly. No, that's dude, really though. Like I had a ukulele for a while and I let the kids play it. And then of course it got broken just from them being kids. And then I'm also like, it was like a $75 ukulele. And musical instruments are a great opportunity for you to like realize how angry your kids can make you over them just being children.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. 100%.
So
For sure.
okay, tell me about your kids. How many you got, ages, all that good stuff.
Okay. So I got 2 kids. Ellis is 7 years old. He literally just turned 7 last week.
Nice.
And I have Silas, who is 3. He's going to be 4 in January, January 5th.
Okay.
Ellis just lost his 2 front teeth in 2 days, which is really exciting for him. But it's really funny just seeing him with this huge gap in his mouth, right?
Yeah.
And then also we've just been teasing him with that Christmas song because
Oh, of course. I know it's the worst time for him to lose
Yeah.
his 2 front teeth. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And they're so there's a little bit of an age gap there,
Mhm.
enough to be like, I'm a younger brother. My brother's about 4.5 years older than me, but kind of seeing that sibling dynamic where Ellis wants a lot of like independence and space, and Silas just wants to do everything his brother does. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of like back and
Yeah.
forth, give me some space, and like
Yep.
there's a lot of crying and lots of stamping around, type of thing. So they're I can remember some of that as a kid,
Yeah.
kind of growing up, So
Yeah. We've been experiencing that this week. So I have a 9 and 7-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. And the 2 older ones, it's called like diamond art. It's like you kind of lay it out. It's got like these little diamonds. You take like a pin and put like wax on it. Then you put it on the thing. And it's like takes hours to do it. And they'll listen to audiobooks and do it. Yeah. And then the 4-year-old is like, I want to do one. And I'm like, you have trouble putting together Lego sets because you're 4. And so like I'm trying to figure out, I always feel like as a parent, you should be taught PR classes. Because basically I'm trying to do good PR. Like, hey man, I love your energy. This redirect you. This do this, like this find your lane. This figure out what you're good at today. Or like a motivational speaker. Because like I'm working hard this week to convince my 4-year-old that I'm not going to buy him the thing he's going to scream at the entire time.
Right. Yeah. The outcome of this already, right? And you're trying desperately to avoid that meltdown that happens.
Yeah, of course.
They can't do it the right way.
Yeah.
My son is, Ellis is doing, I forget, it's called Art Hub for Kids, I think. And they just show you how to draw and do kind of cartoony like type things.
That's cool.
And yeah, it's really cool. I've never seen, he's like, a year ago, he would have gotten really frustrated and angry and just been like, I can't do this. But he's really into it now. And Silas is watching him and he's like, Dad, I want to draw. And he does like, scribbles at this
Yeah.
point, but
He's
he wants
4,
to do it.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he wants to do it exactly. And so we kind of keep telling him like this is kind of like for older kids,
Mhm.
and he's not quite comprehending that. So we're like, all right, have at it, but we know where this is going.
Yeah, it really
We
sucks. It
know,
really
yeah,
sucks.
yeah, it really does. But at the same time, it's like they have to learn,
Yeah. Yeah. That's how my
but
middle child is. My middle child is like, why is my older sister so much better than me at this? And we're like, well, she's 2 years older than you. And also,
yeah,
you're not like, and also like, how do you communicate to a kid like you're not bad? Like
right,
my
right.
middle child is already like my handwriting, penmanship is atrocious,
Mine
and
too.
like my middle child is already better than me. So then I'm trying to be like, you're already better than I am. So like, what's your? Then you're trying to tell a 7-year-old like, what's your metric of success? And they're like,
Right.
what?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We're finding with my son Ellis is that his frustration tolerance is really low. And I wouldn't say he's like a perfectionist, but
Yeah.
he gets really easily frustrated by
Yeah.
things and trying to redirect, like he wants to do it. So if he's getting frustrated, there's a lot of like, why don't you take a break? Like
Yeah.
maybe it's time to take a break. And he's like, no, you know what I
Never.
mean? Yeah,
Yep.
never. And then it just kind of escalates like that. And so we're trying to figure out redirection
Yeah.
and how to do that without upsetting him too much. Because we talk with his teachers at school, and he's a completely sort of different kid at school than he is at home.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and I like it's kind of funny because as a therapist, the therapist side of me, and I've worked with children and adolescents for a really long time.
Okay.
One of the things that I looked for when I was doing work with, was where they were kind of misbehaving, so to speak, or like where they were crashing out, or like, was that at school? Was it at home? Was it both?
Mhm.
Right. So if it was at school, we'd look at the school environment, right? What was going on there? Was there something that needed to be corrected there? What are they not jiving with? If it was home, then we kind of looked at and if it was both, you were just kind of like, okay, there's some sort of emotional dysregulation that uh, spans both time and space. And looking at where I'm like, there's a sort of an immediate type of self-criticism coming from that world where he's having a hard time at home. And so I'm automatically going in my head, it's like, what are we doing wrong? What
Yeah,
are
of course.
and I felt like this is me just being vulnerable and honest. Like I used to
Yeah.
look at other therapists who had kids, and I didn't have kids, and I'd be like, yeah, we need to put our kid in therapy. But like, you need to put your kid in therapy. Like, don't you know what to do?
Yeah, yeah. Don't you know
Type of
the
thing.
answers
Yeah,
here? Yeah.
yeah. And after becoming a parent, like, it's just, I mean, his kids are built so differently.
Yep.
Meeting and attending to their needs specifically and individually, I have, I don't think we're doing anything wrong. It's just interesting,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like,
having yeah.
sometimes hearing your kids self-talk is fascinating. Like, because one of my kids, we went down to like the sand dunes in like southern Colorado. You can actually rent like sleds and like stuff and like sled down like the sand. And one of my kids got scared of one of the hills and was like, "I'm being such a baby." And my wife and I were like, "Who has ever told you you're being a baby?" Because like
Yeah.
who like, and then like I get into investigator mode, which I'm like, who is talking to you like that? Because I want to know who's looking at you and telling you
Right.
you're being a baby. And when you realize it's them, you're like, well, I can't beat you up, so I don't
Yeah.
know what to do.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, there's an immediate self-discovery of, like, who told you that? Who's doing that to you, right? Like right, right. You get scared, you know? We just moved to a new school system. We moved about 4.5 hours away of where we were living. So we started Ellis at a new school, and he's coming back and saying things, and we're like hyper aware,
Absolutely,
because
yeah,
he's starting a new school and
yeah,
and things like that. And it's just, I don't know, it's like, oh, I picked it up here or there or like
yeah.
whatever. But you're just like very
Yeah. Well, it's good. I think. I mean, if I'm honest, it's because I remember being a kid and not having good self talk, and like my parents never told me that stuff. My parents never told me like you're bad at this or something like that. They would always do what I'm trying to do, redirect me to something with my energy is more useful, as opposed to hitting my head against the wall. There's a 7-foot wall and I'm 3 feet tall. You're not going to climb that
right,
wall, man. Like this
right.
puts you somewhere else. And so like some part of my inner child is like, oh, I remember feeling that way of like, I'm useless at this. And while my parents are standing there being like, you're just not ready yet. And a
Right.
year from now, you'll destroy this. You'll be better than all of this. You're just not there yet. But like you can internalize so much guilt and shame regardless of outside messages. And that's just fascinating to me for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that I have kind of come up with, there's always been like a lot of, talk about in each generation. It's just like, what's wrong with the parents of this
Yeah,
generation or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
whatever. But like what I've, what I've kind of seen, I think with like millennial parenting or, some parts of Gen X, like I'm a late millennial born in 83,
Okay.
but a lot of the parents that I deal with, there's a lot of that, what do they call it? Like gentle parenting and stuff like that, which is good. But we all kind of come from a place of what I call trauma parenting, where the things that we kind of internalize as kids, we want to make sure that they don't internalize, right?
Absolutely.
Or
Yep.
that they don't kind of experience. And we become really hyper aware of that. I sometimes have to really remind myself or try and remind myself that like my experience wasn't their experience, right? Or might not be their experience. And sometimes parenting, I think, becomes so much about what we're trying to heal inside of
Hmm.
ourselves,
Yep. Yeah.
and it's very difficult. Like, I say this all the time. Like, I know my kid will be in therapy sometimes and be
Mhm.
like, Dad did this and that. And
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
somehow I'm
Yeah.
gonna mess my kid up. Right.
Mhm.
But if I can just try and be the best dad that I possibly can be and like own up to the things that I do wrong, um, and be aware of my own stuff at the same time, right? So I'm
Yeah.
not transferring that onto them. I mean, kids
Yes.
are insanely resilient,
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
insanely resilient. And most of that I've learned through working, within the foster adoption system
Gosh, yeah.
and traumatic experiences, working with trauma with kids and places like that. Like they're so incredibly resilient. Unless I think that we try and dull down that resiliency a little
Mhm.
bit.
Yeah.
So I'm always just trying to be aware of like,
Yeah.
is this me being anxious or is this like,
Yeah,
is my
yeah.
child actually feeling anxious
Yeah.
in a way? So,
I always feel like if someone's about to become a new dad and like they want like what's the reality? What's this really look like? I'll be like, okay, so you're going to care a ton and you're going to do your best and you have to be okay with the fact that your best isn't going to matter a lot of the
right,
times. And it's going to attack your ego in a way in which you never thought it'd be attacked. And you don't double down on like, but I'm doing the right thing. You just go, oh man, I tried. It didn't hit the mark.
right,
And I
right,
gotta try again. And that's the one thing I see from like our parents' generation that they say I did my best. And all the kids, all people our age are like, it still hurt me. And then the
right,
parents like, but I did my best. And I'm like, I already know as a parent, my best isn't gonna be enough.
right,
And it
right,
doesn't you still try.
right, right.
You don't phone
Absolutely.
it in. But
I
like
was
it's a very real understanding of like when you need therapy later, it's because my best still didn't meet your needs.
right.
And I'm sorry for that deficit that I have and that I might have created.
Right. I am incredibly lucky that my parents preemptively, like I'll go out. My dad's like my hero.
Yeah, cool.
And he preemptively has kind of like, as we've become more friends and we still
Yeah.
hang out, go to lunch and stuff like that, my dad has been very, very intentional about saying, like, I know there were things that I did that was wrong and that this hurt you. And there's no like, but there's just, and I'm
Yes.
sorry,
That but is so important though to not
Yeah.
have because my dad's the same where he'll be like, or my parents both actually, not just my dad, will be like, yeah, we tried and we know there's stuff we did that wasn't the correct way to do it. And for whatever it is, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I also know a lot of people's parents who are like, but however, it's
Right.
because of, and there's
Right.
like, I think the generous read I'm going to give is that you're trying to let me into your mental space. And that's the generous read I'll give you. But also, if you don't acknowledge that you hurt me, then I don't know. And what friendship do you have with someone in which like, hey, it's hurt when you did this to me, and they go, man, and then you
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
on,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you continue the friendship. That's not
Yeah.
how I usually. That if you do that to me, Jeremy, I'm gonna like, come. It's not gonna return your calls. Like
Right.
that's
Right.
how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. The kind of invalidation
Yeah,
of that, and it's funny though because it's like I think it's easier to cut off friends than it is to cut off your family,
yeah, of course.
right? Like,
Yeah,
like now I'm not gonna invite you to Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah,
You
right.
know?
We've never gotten to that point with any family members, whatever. But like, I wouldn't know how to look at any family member and be like, "Hey, you hurt me once and you won't acknowledge it, so I'm done with you." Is
Right.
like, I don't. How do you? Some people know how to do
Yeah.
that. I don't have enough trauma, which causes me to think I should do that. But
Right.
like,
Yeah.
interesting. That's not my reality, and I'm glad at the same time,
Yeah.
selfishly. So
Totally. I think there's something that I was like really, I just never had that experience. I didn't have bad parents.
yeah, right.
I had parents who tried really hard. Some that, I think my mom struggled with some mental health and chronic pain
Okay.
that, was difficult for me to deal with as a child. And she's been very like repentant of that. And so like if there's and I'm sorry there, like it's for me to kind of work out how I feel. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? After that.
Yeah.
And I remember just a year ago, I sat down with my dad and I just said, this really hurt me. Like when this happened. And my dad was like, I still think about that moment to this day.
Yeah.
And like, I feel so terrible about it. And I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. One of the things, just kind of going back to my therapy background,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's so many kids who don't hear I'm sorry from
They
parents.
don't. Yeah.
Right. And it is one of the most integral things for a kid to hear is an adult say, I
Yeah.
made a mistake. I hurt you. I'm sorry. You know, because so many parents come from a point of like, well, either authoritarian style parenting where it's you do what I say,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like that's how to be a parent. But I can't tell you, especially to kids who have been in like foster and adoption or like abusive situations where a simple I'm sorry can mean the world,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
To them. So it's so important.
Yeah. I'll usually go back with my kids because, yeah, like it's the realization of course, I didn't mean for this to go wrong. And then you just kind of sit down with the kid and be like, hey, it went this way. Here's how I thought it would go. It didn't go that way. Next time, just so you know, I also don't want that to be the end result. I'm going
Right.
to try to make, or like even like kid has a meltdown because you kept him out too late or something like that. I'll look at my kids and be like, hey, I think you had such a time going to sleep. You were crying and stuff like that because I kept you out too late. That's on me. Next time, whenever we're at a playground and say, hey, let's go, this is why I'm saying it because I don't want you to feel this bad, feel this tired, and feel this overwhelmed. So
Right.
just know I don't want this to happen again either. And I'm going to do what I can to make sure it doesn't happen again. And I'm sorry
Right.
that it happened.
Yeah.
And that
Just
doesn't seem that hard to me, but it is for a lot of people for some reason.
yeah. I think that tends to be with like again, kind of like their own background of
Yeah, usually.
parenting
Yeah.
and how they I mean, everything goes back to child.
It does. It's
Doesn't it?
great. I
Yeah.
love also though childhood wounds are fascinating to discuss. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what's wrong with me. So
No, I think people are obviously I do the work that I do because I find people to be extremely fascinating, but that time and period of life is so foundational, and it's hard for me because I work with teenagers and adolescents and I like that population
okay.
um a lot. And working with adults, I can kind of catch the trauma a little bit before it starts to ingrain itself
Hmm.
completely.
Yeah.
And I found working with adults, it's a lot of the trauma is already set in, and having to go back and redo that work is difficult and it's painful. It takes a really long time. And so working with teens and young adults, teens have, at least in Washington state, they have a right at the age of 13 about whether or not they want their parents involved in any sort of mental health treatment.
Really?
Yeah, so
Okay.
they can say no. When I'm talking with a teenager, I, have to let them know that like I can't talk to your parents unless you say it's okay, and I have to sign a release of information.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and that it makes sense. I oftentimes tell them like I'm with you maybe like an hour a week if like it is important for me to kind of talk to your parents because I'm your advocate,
Yeah.
right? Like if your parents are coming down on you about something, it took me years to feel comfortable in this position and realize that I am a professional,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like coming from me, it's going to sound a little bit more, it's going to sound better,
It will.
right?
Yeah.
They're more apt to, maybe take a step back.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's people, I don't want you to talk about anything. And there are limits to that confidentiality. And
Of
that,
course. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
includes suicidal, more or less suicidal intent or homicidal. 13 years, I have never had anybody who was homicidal. So
Yeah, that's good.
knock on wood.
Yeah, yeah.
Or kind of one of my personal ones is like if you're self-harming to the degree that it's really like it's doing some real bodily damage,
Yeah.
like I'm going to ask to I'm going to tell you that I need to talk to your
I got to
parent,
step in.
right?
I got to step in
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And then the other tends to be like if they're abusing or being abused,
gotcha.
right?
Yeah.
Then I have to kind of like step in and that's one of the harder parts of my job is CPS calls and things like that. It's the worst. Well, I have a question for you, just as a
Yeah, yeah.
parent. I don't know what the roles are in terms of Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
What would you, as a parent, what would you feel about your child having that limit of confidentiality at age 13?
I think everyone deserves a space to be themselves in which there are like limited consequences, like in which there's someone in their life in which they can just be whatever they need to be, express whatever they need to be, and it doesn't follow them somewhere else. Is like, I am all for that because I think that's part of what a therapy relationship is. You show up and you just
Right.
unload, say, here's what I am today, here's who I am today. That person helps you assess what the hell that means. And then,
Yeah.
you can kind of like compartmentalize, be like, okay, I left that with that person. Now let me go into the rest of the world. Now, if my daughters or son needed to talk to someone and I never had to know about the conversation, as long as I trust the person, I think in that scenario, you just have to vet the therapist and be like, hey, what are your expertise? What do you know? What are the scenarios in which you bring it to my attention? Um, and just trust that like you you process stuff, you figure stuff out, and it's a process to get there. And me knowing every step of that journey is something I would love. Honestly, I would love to know how my kid's brain works. But I also kind of what you're saying earlier with like, if your kids needed therapy, if they need therapy, it can't be you. You're so close to the situation and you're
Right.
so intertwined with it that like there's no way my kids could objectively discuss their identity with me without me influencing in some way because I'm their dad. I just know that's reality. I'm going to influence
Right.
the situation because parent figure, dad, authority, all of that is too intertwined for someone to speak fully freely. And I totally get that. So if they can have a
Right.
space where they can speak fully freely, hell yeah, do it.
I think it's interesting too because having worked community mental health for a while and then now being in private practice for 7 years, the socioeconomic status matters a
Yeah, it
lot.
does. Yeah.
And so I have parents who are very willing to just literally say like they need a space to talk. Like if there's something that you think I need to know,
Yeah.
let me know,
Yeah.
but I'm happy just to have them, kind of have a space to kind of work some things out, for themselves. Whereas in lower income, socioeconomic status, Medicaid, Medicare, those different types of things, the situations are so complex. There's so much there's more trauma, there's more mental health issues that are
Mhm.
kind of going on. And there's a lot of parents who they want to know a lot, right? And
Yeah.
it's kind of an affront to them or a fear that they have of like, are you going to call CPS about this? Are you going to
That makes
call,
sense. Yeah.
and yeah, it's 100% makes sense. The word, the kind of like hardest parents, I'm going to say the worst, the hardest parents to deal with are typically ones who are in the middle of a divorce and you have
Yeah.
a narcissistic parent who kind of wants control over everything, which, I know friends who, um, doctors were really hard to work with
Mhm.
in that kind of capacity because there's always some form of like narcissism that kind of goes with that,
Yep. Yep.
but they're higher socioeconomic status. And so it's
Yeah.
always just sad to me when the kid gets put in the middle and how confusing that is.
Yeah, totally.
And, whatever kind of trauma that's going on there. But socioeconomic status, private insurance, being able to pay out of
Yeah.
pocket, there's a
Of course.
definite difference there,
Yeah.
in
Totally.
terms, yeah,
That
in
makes a
terms
ton
of
of
that.
sense. Also, I feel like if you are, I think stability matters a ton for so
100%.
much of the human psyche. And like, yeah, if you are lower social economic status, your stability is pretty non-existent. And then
Right.
you know that your kid is having trouble and you want them to feel it all. I think it compounds so easily. And if anything, it would be a reflection of how it'd be hard not to internalize since you can't keep things stable and get more for your family, that's why your kid is having problems. And then
Right.
then I would project myself into that conversation. I'd want to talk to the therapist and be like, how much of this is my fault? How
Yeah.
much of this is because of me?
Yeah.
It's just what I wouldn't know how to not feel that way. Cause why would you not? Yeah.
Right. Right. On the opposite end, I would say that kids that I work with, and on one of the episodes that I did with Stacey Hilt, who played for Coalesce in the Casket Lottery, we
Yeah,
were
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of talking about the fact that, we can talk a lot of times I have in session. It's funny to me, not literally. So first of all, I'm originally from New Jersey, so some of the
Okay.
language and stuff like
So
that that I
you're a New
use, like,
Englander. I got it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
blunt,
Yeah.
very, very, very specific.
Yes.
I don't dance around stuff very much, but it's funny to me in a therapeutical sense when kids come in and they start talking about their teenagers, they start talking about their parents and they start kind of criticizing them. And you can see the anxious look on their face. And I talked about this with Stacy and the fact that he was talking about his parents and he had the same kind of reaction, which was like, I don't want to say anything bad about my parents. Like, I know, like, I love them. I don't want to give a bad impression. And part of the thing that I have to do is say, like, it's okay. You can hold two things in your hands, that your
Yep.
parents love you and they've made those mistakes. Criticizing them is just a recognition of how some of their parenting has affected your life. But you
Yeah.
can see this visceral kind of like
Yeah, that makes sense.
anxiety that
Yeah.
comes up, in that way. And I think it doesn't leave us.
No. No, I think the way I describe it is like I think it's fascinating to understand when I'm trying to justify someone and when I'm trying to understand them. Because to me, justify means I won't look at it objectively. I'll just be like, "Meh, they did really good, blah, 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 blah." And it's like, well, you're ignoring, in my opinion, then I'm ignoring a lot of truths just because I'm like, I don't have the answers. So
Right.
I'm like, in what scenarios am I justifying my parents? And when am I just trying to understand them? Like, I'm not trying to diminish my own pain. If I justify something, I feel like I'm trying to diminish some part of the conversation to
Right.
move on. And to teach that to a teenager to be like, hey, just so you know, these are both going to be true. Like, I always feel like if I want to criticize someone else, I also want to understand at the same time. Because I think
Right.
those two truths can be the same. And if I don't,
Right.
then I just destroy them in my head. And that
Right. And
doesn't create a relationship.
yeah, and it's funny because that's the hallmark of a well developed psyche. And when they're teenagers, like, they're still developing that.
Absolutely.
If
Yeah.
they have a healthy environment,
Yes.
like, and so holding on to those like double truths can be kind of tricky in a lot of ways for them. Yeah. So you have a healthy psyche.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate that. Well, I mean, it didn't really exist, and I wasn't always there. But it's that I do think it's a truth, and I'm trying to teach my kids that as much as I can. Of like, hey, you can hold two things at once, which is why I'm so grateful for Inside Out, the first movie,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you can be happy
100.
and sad at the same time, and just to let kids know that, because like I think I love as we get older and as generations move on, what you're accepting of and what conversations you're willing to have is phenomenal. Like that you are willing to discuss, you can be happy and sad at the same time, as opposed to like you're sad, go get happy, and it's like,
Right. Right.
well, that's not really how it works.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that movie was a really great illustration and overused in the therapy world.
Absolutely, yes.
Just to kind of, just to kind of explain stuff. And it's funny. I try and talk a lot with my kids about feelings, and my 7-year-old wants me to shut up. Like,
You're
full
at that
stop.
point. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, full stop. Like, there'll be times when he'll be like, "Are we gonna have another talk again?" And like he will physically groan, and it'll just be like, "Ugh." And I'm like, this is not how I thought this was going to go. As a dad, I was like, yeah, we're gonna be about feelings. We're gonna talk about this stuff, and he wants
He's
nothing to
done.
do with it. Yeah, he's just. We're like, no, this is important. We need to talk about that.
Yeah,
It's knowing his limitation about
absolutely, yes.
what he can kind of absorb informationally. One of the things that you kind of learn working with children too is that especially kids maybe who have ADHD, is like, you need one sentence things.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
because it just turns off. right? And so it's hard to remember that. To explain concepts, they're not that short, you know? And
Of course.
so it's so important to keep it as short as possible.
Yeah. It's so hard though.
It is. It really is. Like when your kid says like, why, right? And you're like, I don't know how to explain that concept within like a really short
Two
amount of time.
sentences? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. There are times when my kid makes me feel, I shouldn't say makes me feel, I feel like an idiot
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because he will be like, well, tell me about this. Like, he asks me all about wars and why do wars happen and what,
Yeah.
or like the concept of slavery. And I was like, I I
There's a
don't
lot of
know.
darkness to introduce you to
Yeah,
right now, man.
yeah, I don't yeah, and also, like, how do I explain this in a concept that is, like, not a very, very complex, but also
Yeah.
black and white situation?
Yeah.
What happens or what causes people to do things, you know? And I'm just so stuck for words, which is usually why I go to my wife, and I'm just like, because she's way better at it.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
know? And I think spiritual concepts too, trying to explain some of those things.
Yeah, just trying to keep it simple but true to
Yeah.
what it is. Like, we moved out to Denver in 2024 from Nashville. We lived in Nashville for like 18 years, and our car got stolen on the way out there. And our oldest still has a ton of anxiety about like, hey, are all the doors locked? Is everything done? And try to explain to her still when she's 9 to be like, hey, it happens. Like our car was locked, the window was broken. Like we had a Kia. They're extremely easy to steal. Like I'm going it from the super logical thing of like it happens. Like we didn't do it. Like we didn't do anything to have it happen to us. Whenever I get too logical, I'm like, stop. What are you feeling? What are you
Right.
thinking right now? Because in my mind, I'm like, yeah, our car got stolen. It really sucks. It was really frustrating. Made me really mad. I don't think it's going to happen again because of these 20 reasons. And it was a perfect storm that could even happen in the first place. And stuff happens sometimes while she's just trying to look for safety. And I'm like,
Right.
but how do I communicate safety to you whenever your sense of safety was already broken?
Right. Right.
It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that sucks. I mean, it's funny in therapy, not just I mean, with everybody, there's like some pretty core common principles. One is kind of like what are our core fears in
Yeah.
general, right? What drives that kind of anxiety? For most people, it's like failure
Yeah.
or not being good enough, and that drives a lot. But there's also how we navigate the world in safety.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking about this just before we were talking. I was like, what do therapists sometimes have? What makes somewhat of a good therapist is intuition based, right? But that intuition in childhood is sort of like a coping skill or an adaptation to try and survive,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And so it just so much comes back to safety, and like things are you can be logical, but feelings aren't always logical, right?
No,
And like
they
I
aren't.
had my car stolen twice in
That
Portland,
sucks. That
and that
sucks,
was
man.
like the illusion of safety got broken, And then how do you once that's broken, how to piece that back together even as an adult is
Mm-hmm.
incredibly difficult,
Yep.
There's
Yep.
a great I'm a huge Calvin and Hobbes fan.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this comic, but there's a whole storyline where their house gets broken into.
Oh, I don't remember that one. No.
Yeah, and they come back from vacation and Hobbs is gone. Like Calvin's freaking out because Hobbs is gone. And like their parents are kind of like that illusion of safety is kind of like broken. And the parents are struggling with it too.
Mm-hmm.
Where the father is like, he says something to the effect of like, man's home should be his castle, not his fortress.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Like that's when that illusion of safety is broken, it really kind of messes with you,
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
and fragments you. And children deal with that.
they do. Yep. And you're trying to then explain to your kids, like, I don't know if your car was stolen whenever you had kids and everything, but like whenever your kids start to come, like it's a big concept of like, hey, this can actually happen at any point in time.
Right.
Like it
Right.
can. And the like being like, it's like, oh, can you die driving in your car? Like, yeah, I can die every single time I drive in my car. It's an option, it's an opportunity.
Right.
And
Right.
to not let that fear consume you and debilitate you, it's just everyone's personal relationship with anxiety,
Yeah.
realistic.
Wait, yeah. 100%. Like my wife works as a as an operating room nurse, and
Gosh,
my
yeah.
dad was an EMT for like 25 years, and they were like, you will our kids and like both to me, like, you will never ever ride a motorcycle. Not
Dude,
happening.
same, same.
No
Yep.
way. No
Nope.
how.
No
You
motorcycles. No
know?
motorcycles. Nope. Nope.
And because of the things that they've seen,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Some of that kind of creeps back.
Yeah.
So even as a young kid, much younger, my son Ellis would be riding in the car and he would see somebody on a motorcycle and he would go, that person's not being safe.
So true. I have friends who I haven't had any friends die in motorcycle accidents, but I've had friends whose dads have died in motorcycle accidents. I had a coworker who they were stopped waiting to like merge or something like that, and the car behind them just didn't see them, so bumped in the back of the car. Her husband broke like she broke her leg, her husband broke her leg, and I'm like, I'm very risk adverse, I guess is what I'm
Yeah.
learning
Well,
in this
yeah.
moment.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's different when it's your kids, right? And you
Yeah.
think to yourself as a teenager, like, why are my parents
Yeah.
like this, right?
Yeah.
There's that individuality. I was talking to my nephew and he wants to get a motorcycle. He's 18. And
Yeah.
I was like, you know, your Aunt Erin is going to like freak out, right? And your grandma's going to freak out too, because my mom is a very anxious person. And he just
Yeah.
turned and he was like, it's not their decision to make. I was like,
It's accurate.
you're
You're
right.
not
You're
wrong,
right.
man. I'm
You're
just trying to
right.
make you aware of the consequences and how
Right.
Thanksgiving's already going to be awkward, man. Can you just not?
Right. We don't want to have a fight about your safety. At this
Please,
point,
that'd be
you
great.
know?
Okay. And we haven't talked about
Yeah.
your podcast at all. So before,
Yeah.
and I know you've probably got like a therapy session or lunch or something like that you
I do
want to
at
do.
12, but
Okay,
that's
cool.
about it. Yeah.
Then I will go ahead and transition into you talking about your
Sure.
podcast. So, hey, Jeremy, I know you exist because you do a podcast. Tell me about your podcast, all that good stuff.
Okay, so I started. It's called Safe and Sound. It originally started as something called Welcome to the Scene, where I would say it was more like therapy for me. But the
Yeah.
idea was I was really big into the post-hardcore emo scene when I was younger, and I have some weird connections to people through that. And during COVID, I was looking for like sort of like an outlet. And I was like, I think I could make some interviews happen with people. Like that was just kind of the basic concept. And I wanted to have a little bit of a mental health bent to it, but it was really kind of hard to merge the two ideas that were going on simply because we're talking about somebody's career and then having
Mhm.
to kind of like go like, and what about your mental health?
Yeah.
It seems like a kind of awkward transition. It started coming out more and more within episodes. And my friend Dave is a producer in New York City. And I had, I mean, this is just truthful. I had kind of peaked on listenership. And my friend Dave was like, I, I think you need to focus the podcast a little bit more. Admittedly, I was kind of steering away from mental health
Mhm.
simply because that was my day job. And I was also getting really, really heavily burned out on doing therapy and talking about mental. I was not in a good mental
Okay.
health
Yeah.
for myself. And but these themes kind of kept coming out normally at the end of an episode,
Hmm.
which is interesting
Yeah.
because the good stuff always comes out at the end of therapy sessions too.
Yeah.
And it's this kind of like unique phenomenon. And so what I really wanted to do was take these musicians that were not only people that I really admired, but knew that people had a connection to their music and really dissect and think about how music affects both positively and negatively people's health and mental health, right?
Yeah.
And what the intersection of that means, and really kind of expand the podcast to talking with mental health experts and therapists and really kind of looking at their experiences with music and
Hmm.
also their clients' experiences with music. I think so many of us use music as a kind of a balm over things, right? You know, to kind of soothe and heal. So I was really interested in looking at some of these musicians and how in their own personal lives they have used their gift or, you know, even translating that experience into catharsis, right? And so my last episode, we kind of went through, I recorded this episode and it hasn't been released yet, but it's with my friend Knox, who is a licensed mental health therapist who works with trauma and somatic therapy.
Hmm.
And we were kind of talking about somatic therapy talks about how trauma lives in the body and ways that we kind of deal with it. And people who are traumatized are often very disconnected from their body. So somatic therapy really kind of focuses in on feelings, sensations
Yeah.
that are kind of being held in the body and then using movement. And that could be dance. That could be, we talked about moshing. We talked about
Yeah.
getting in the
Yeah.
pit,
Yeah.
right? And like how that could be a very therapeutic experience for people. And I thought it was wild as we were talking about it because I was like, yeah, there is a catharsis that goes on in there. And not only that, it's violent, but it's safe,
I
right?
gotcha. Yeah.
It's safe in the extent that the community around, if you fall down, somebody's going to pick you back up, right? They're going to make sure you're not being trampled on. And if you have trauma, you get knocked down and there's nobody there to pick you up.
Yeah.
And when that trauma really embodies itself, it's because, again, fragmenting that safety and nobody's there to kind of be like, hey, let's do this together. Let me pick you back
Yeah.
up. Get back in it, type of thing. We feel very isolated when we experience either physical trauma or have been in like really intense traumatic situations, whether that's mentally or physically. And so I wanted to explore that side of the therapeutic side as well. But it's been really fun also talking that a really constant theme that has come out with some of the musicians has been bipolar disorder,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is like, it makes sense. So there's a difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2.
Okay.
Jake Schneider from My Bear has bipolar 2. He was diagnosed with. I know Anthony Green
Hmm.
from Circa and,
Seosin, right?
whatever. Yeah, Seosin,
Yeah.
LS Dunes,
Yeah.
the many bands
All the
has
things.
bipolar 2 as well. And Stacy Hilt that I was talking with recently has bipolar 2. And the difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 is bipolar 1 goes through manic episodes and depressive episodes that tend to be longer and more severe.
Okay.
So somebody with mania in bipolar 1, it can be more intense. And when I talk about mania, it's grandiose thoughts, uh, just for listeners, massive amounts of creativity. There's
Yeah.
excessive energy that kind of goes on and a lot of poor decision making. People can get hypersexual, make really bad financial decisions all within this time, and then it kind of crashes down. So this key distinct feature between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 has to do with time and also intensity.
Okay.
So with mania and bipolar 1, you can experience hallucinations and delusions.
Okay.
While bipolar 2, at least the hallucinations part doesn't exist. But what these musicians are tapping into is that intense period of creativity that
Yeah.
kind of goes on where they're making. Stacy said, I had like several bands. I was doing this, I was doing that, and I was partying on top of it,
Yeah.
and talking to Jake, that also kind of morphed into an intense anxiety. And so oftentimes it was really interesting when talking about bands who broke up either naturally or because some sort of thing was fractured. A lot of anxiety would creep in, a lot of depression would creep in. And so I think the whole goal of the podcast was for me, after going through an intense, I would describe it as a mental health crisis for the past year and a
Sure.
half, you become
Yeah.
so isolated and alone, and that people could listen to this and be like, I'm not alone. Like if my favorite musician is kind of dealing with this, like, whoa, I don't have
Yeah.
to, I don't have to feel alone in that, and people that we look up to or provide catharsis for us, a lot of that catharsis is driven from their own catharsis, of playing music and stuff like that. So I really wanted to really emphasize that in the podcast and really kind of spur it in a new direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
So
mean, doing a dad podcast and I've had a ton of musicians on. That's the hope is like, because I think it's very easy to think that you're the other in a scenario. Like you're the
right,
one who's left out.
absolutely.
You're the one who isn't understood. You're the one, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's been really cool to get to interview a lot of musicians where it's like, oh man, you also go to bedtime or you like Matt Carney. I remember talking to him and we like talked about how like going to a restaurant or coffee with like your kids, and people are like, oh, are you babysitting today? And you're like, some part of you is so deeply offended because you're
Right, 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 right.
like
Yeah.
no, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I just related to Matt Carney on an everyday moment of life.
Right.
How
Yeah.
cool
And
is that?
so
Like,
cool. Yeah.
so, but like, is it easy to be like, oh, they must not be normal people? It's like, no, they still get it. They still do long car trips with their kids. It might
Right.
be a tour bus versus a van, but like
Right.
they still deal with this anxiety. They still deal with this I'm not enough of that exists in everyone's life. And yeah, it's fascinating to me whenever I hear someone who has inspired me talk about something, how much more it means. Which is
Right.
it's I don't know why it is, but if I'm already looking up to how someone perceives the world and then they let me in more into how their mental space is, it is kind of like, oh man, cool. To me, the most beautiful thing about art is it gives you a language when you didn't have a language before.
Right.
And that's
Absolutely.
a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a conversation with my friend Knox again about there was a time period in my life where I wanted, certain things like certain lyrics tattooed on me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was talking to, I don't know if you know the band, The Beautiful Mistake
I
at
know
all.
the name, but I can't remember any of their songs off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Josh Hagwis is the lead singer and
Okay.
guitar player. And I was talking with him and I said, like, can you tell me what this lyric is about? Because I've always really been drawn to it. And he was like, nope. He's like, I'm not going to tell you. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the part of me that was really like, "Ugh." And his point was, however you connect to it,
Yeah.
how you connect to it,
Yeah.
it means what it means to you. And I don't want to steal that from you, And I was like, that's awesome. Just tell me what it means.
My favorite is, since there are so many podcasts out there now, is hearing musicians talk about albums that they made and how they felt while making it. Like
Yeah.
I just listened to Matt Pryor did an episode on Vinyl Emergency, and he talked about the first New Amsterdam's album, which I was obsessed with. And he was like, yeah, whenever I made this certainly something I didn't want it to be, or wasn't what I thought it'd be whenever I originally went in the studio with it. So I did I re-recorded it like a year or two ago. So it'd be more what I envisioned the album to be. And I'm just like,
Interesting.
oh, I kind of convinced my parents to buy me an acoustic guitar so I could play all these songs on an acoustic guitar. And here you are being like, I think it could have been better. And I'm like, this was the
That was the thing. Yeah.
this was the thing. This was the thing. If I could make an album that sounded like what you thought wasn't enough,
Right.
then I would be doing something good. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, just how fascinating. How fascinating
Yeah.
is that reality?
At the very end of the day, what I found out is like artists are artists, and especially musical artists. And when I talk with them sometimes and like you're experiencing something, making this connection at a concert or something like that. And I'm like, dude, everybody's singing their lyrics. Like this must be an amazing experience for them. And a lot of times they're like, I'm not like I had Bob Nana on from Braden Hey Mercedes, and he was like, I didn't really notice that a lot of the time. He's like,
Basically, yeah.
and like the kind of connection or them just saying like Josh Brigham from Hope's Fall, the guitar player, we were talking about Furnace Fest and they kind of play the first kind of reunion set back there. And I was like, what was that like for you? Blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I couldn't hear anything in my monitors.
Oh
And so I
no, that
was,
sucks.
yeah. So he's like, I was just concerned about whether or not it sounded like crap. And like, it took me out of that experience. But a
Yeah.
lot of the time, the artist inside of me or the musician side of me is just thinking like, can I hear?
Yeah.
Like, what does this sound like?
Yeah.
You know? And it's this kind of like interesting juxtaposition, and it's just funny in that way. Cause like you're experiencing, like you have these like magical moments at concerts and connecting to people and they're just kind of like, I don't know, man. I just wanted it to sound good, The musician side of me goes, yeah, of course.
Get it. Totally get it. One of my friends, since we live out in Colorado, it does take a bit to adjust to the altitude out here. And I had a friend who, I saw him play set. He plays drums. I was talking to him afterwards. So, how do you feel like the wind? And he was like, man, I should have drank more water all day. Like, I wasn't hitting the notes I thought I could hit. And I'm like, yeah, man, did not pick up on any of that. If you guys were out of tune with each other, if you felt like something was out of sync, I did not. You guys have to mess up real bad. You didn't whenever a band's like, hey, let's do that verse again. We did it badly. That's the only sign where I'm like, oh, you guys didn't play the way you thought you should.
Right.
That's about it. Besides that, you're just there like, that's a good groove.
Yeah.
That's good.
You're grooving along with it, and I'm curious for just asking you this question, but what is there a concert that you can say that you've been to that was either such a cathartic moment for you or one that really kind of, I don't know, you connected to in
Oh
such
yeah,
a way?
yeah.
Uh,
I got an answer for you. So I'll give two. It's a two-parter answer. Whenever I'm from Indiana originally, Southern Indiana, it's like 2.5 hours from Nashville. Whenever I was a senior in high school, I went down and saw Sigur Rós play at the Ryman for their
wow.
album Tack. I watched all of it. I think it was 2022 or so. They did another tour, so I saw Sigur Rós a second time in the Ryman, and they played songs from Tack, and it felt like a time machine in which I almost like
Mm,
went back to like the 18, 19-year-old version of myself, and almost not like I am kind of hippie-ish, and I'm kind of like, all right, man, if you could tell 18, 19-year-old self, here you are 20 years later, you're married, you've graduated college, and you have 3 kids. Do you think that younger version of yourself would believe any of what you're saying right now?
right.
Well, also, I mean, I'm sure you've listened to Girls also. It's an
Right.
experience.
Yeah,
They've got like a lot of
absolutely.
low vibrations in their music, so you literally feel their music in your body the entire time. So it's something ambient like that where you just sit there the entire time and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't like. And I have other examples also, but that's the one that comes to mind the most
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that vibration sound.
Yeah, you feel it.
Just
Yeah, yeah,
out of curiosity, when you feel that, what is it? How do you, this is the therapist question, but how do
yeah,
you feel like
yeah, yeah.
emotionally?
Yeah, yeah. What I would say is something like that is, I mean, kind of what you're saying with like your friend Knox's study of bodies. I think it's about grounding. And to me, like what makes you grounded in this moment? And a low vibration that you feel in your chest is like, how can you ignore it? Like if you have something
Right.
that's literally shaking your body
Right. Right.
to be like, man, I'll just keep on walking is like, no, 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 man. Like you've got to stop. You've got to feel that, kind of analyze it, see what's going on. So to me, that it's something like that just guarantees like a presence to the moment because
Right.
whenever your body gets involved, I think it's why you detach from your body because you can ignore the moment in front of you a lot
Yes. Yeah.
easier if you
Correct.
ignore your body and all of your flight or fight or freeze and fawn response.
Right.
So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
that's the low vibrations. It's kind of like, hey man, you're here, be here. Like your
Yeah.
body is screaming at you, you're here right now, be here, feel it.
One of the interesting things about that, have you ever heard about polyvagal theory?
I am vaguely familiar with it, and I think I've probably watched an Instagram video on it. So give me a better definition.
So polyvagal theory is essentially that there's like a main nerve that goes down into your stomach through your chest and to your stomach, and it's kind of it's the main nerve for your sympathetic no okay, I should know all this stuff. Just
You're the therapist here,
yeah, yeah,
not
yeah,
me.
yeah. It's responsible for calming down the fight, flight, or freeze
Okay.
response.
Yeah.
So if you can stimulate that nerve, it brings a sense of calmness. And so vibration, when you are trying to, the name escapes me, but then one of the main guys of polyvagal, Peter Levine, polyvagal theory and also somatic theory has an exercise and it's called vooing. And what you do is you take a breath in like this, and then you make a voo sound to
Yeah.
get that vibration, right?
Yeah.
And it also is reminiscent of mindfulness exercises
Mhm.
in Buddhists, right? Where they're
Yep.
kind of doing the low. But what that
Yeah.
does is stimulate the polyvagal nerve and it leads to a sense of calmness, right? And so, like, when you're in a bassy place or you're feeling those vibrations, there's a stimulation there that does kind of put you in presence, but also brings you
Yeah.
down, right? In a
Yeah.
way, which I think is like super cool. So when I have a practice, when essentially what happened to me is I got stuck in a situation at work in therapy where I was working for somebody else. My body just rebelled really hard on me and
Mhm.
was like, if you're not going to take us out of this situation, we will. And so I developed
Yeah.
super, super intense anxiety on a
That
24-hour
sucks.
hour basis.
Yeah.
And part of that, I mean, it's lasted for a really long time, but part of bringing that down has been this practice of when I am feeling elevated, moving my body, and then also doing this vooing. And you can feel it. You can
Mhm.
feel it calm and bring you down, And I think that happens in music a lot too. I did a paper in grad school about the effect of physically putting an instrument in somebody's hand who's been traumatized and playing physical music with people. And what was found was that, like, especially in other cultures, there's a communal experience of playing instruments and dancing, and that becomes a shared experience of moving through trauma together.
Yeah.
And it's awesome, you know? And there's a lot of ways that you lose community when you're traumatized. And there's a lot of, like, cultural experiences, I think, in America, especially I think as, like, white Americans, of not being able to process that trauma in community or through cultural dance or any of those things. And so it's just amazing how
Yeah.
music,
Yeah.
works through trauma, works us through our emotions,
It is. Yeah.
in a lot of ways, in a ton of ways.
No, I mean, like, we won't get into it because we should not make this call 2 hours. But how America deals with grief is always fascinating
Yes.
to me. Our inability, like, I mean, already grief is hard to know what the hell to do with in any form, as big as it can get and as minimal as it can get. And so, like, how do you express grief appropriately and in community? How do you be in a community in which people are willing to hear and accept your grief? Is all something where, like, I'm like, how do we? I don't feel like we're doing it right.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping for limited moments of grief in which I need to realize how badly we
Right,
are at
right,
it.
right. My wife, was a hospice nurse, and she's going back into
Man,
it
yeah,
as well. It was interesting. She was like, "The people who have the hardest death are the people who hold on to it, to living."
yeah,
And when their process of dying can either be an incredibly peaceful process or it can be an incredibly painful process.
yeah,
And the the idea of fear and anxiety not letting yourself pass or not having family members holding on and stuff like that, is hard. She said, if I'm convinced of anything after her experience in hospice, she was like that there is something going on afterwards.
yeah, yeah.
Like, I've had way too many weird experiences in there to,
Just be like,
not.
man,
Yeah, 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 yeah. And grief, the concept of grief is that it never goes away.
correct. Yes, yep.
Never goes away. You just kind of learn how to deal with it
Hmm.
better, I think, and make meaning out
Hmm.
of it. It's
Yeah,
something that you hold. That can be really, really scary.
it can
Kind
be.
of going back to how, as a culture, white Americans deal with death. I often think about in Judaism and Jewish culture, and especially like in the Bible, you can read about it. Like, there's a mourning period
Hmm.
that's like a
Yes,
week,
yeah.
and they mourn hard. They
Hmm.
wail, they cry, and then it's like, and we're done. Like, this is how we do, and we move on. We don't forget, but it's like that was the period,
Yeah,
right? To do that, and there's so many different cultures. There's like, this is the way that we grieve, and there's not that for us. We're kind of just like alone in it a lot, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I'm curious what fascinates you about grief.
I mean, I just watched 6 Feet Under too much. That's mostly what it was. No, I think it's because I am fascinated by the things, if you can't tell, I'm fascinated by the things that create dissonance inside of us that all of us deal with every single day. And how do you create outlets to talk about that? Because I think it can really damage you. If you don't have the space to discuss what you're feeling
Absolutely.
internally, you create coping mechanisms that you then have to unwind. It's like you broke your leg, you didn't set it properly, and then at some point in time, you have to either re-break your leg and set it correctly, or you just live the rest of your life with a broken leg. And
Yeah.
like grief is one of those things where like there's a trauma, there's an action of some sort that usually is because it's something you had no ability to control any aspect of it, but it still happened. And how your psyche deals with that amount of a lack of control can really do some damage to yourself. So
Right.
how do you process that correctly? How do you get around people who are like, hey, this is like, how do you share that with people? And
Right.
I think in some forms of grief, you do run into situations where people then get tired of hearing about the grief. They think you should have moved on. And to me, like grief is something that like I haven't experienced a lot of great moments that cause grief, but I already know like, yeah, whenever my parents pass away, I don't get over that one day. I carry the memory. I carry that with me for the rest of my life because my mom has shown me that's how she carries the grief of the loss of her mom and her dad is you just carry it with you. Every
Yeah.
holiday, you're reminded of it. Some days it weighs heavy, some days it doesn't, and some days you don't even think about it. And it's not. I think we want things to be very clean in America. We
Yes,
want things to be
absolutely.
tidy, want it to be tied up, want it to be done with. And I don't. I That's not reality. And the more you can make it okay for people to be like, hey, that's you thought you were done with this, you're not, and that's okay. Just let me know where you are. I think it's the healthier way to actually do it.
I think there's two thoughts I have about that. One is from a therapeutic standpoint, we have to be like grief is a process. We have to be ready for that. And a lot of times, not a lot of times, but I've had some times where parents have kind of this traumatic event has happened and they're like, they need to deal with this
Yeah.
and they're not ready,
Yeah.
right? They're
Yep.
not ready to deal with it, or they don't feel as impacted by it to the point of like their parent might be, right? Like I had a client whose father committed suicide.
Dude. Yeah.
And yeah, it was hard. It was really
Yeah.
hard. And he was just not ready for it. But mom was just very wanted to push and make sure he was talking about it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I just had to communicate with her. I was like, right now, he seems fine and he's dealing with it in the way that he knows how to deal with it. Like, I don't think he's ready. Like, me pushing him to kind of feel something is more damaging, and that was really hard
Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
to compute, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, after that, she stopped communicating with him and you know what I mean? Which makes all the sense in the world, but it was a difficult position for me to kind of tell the parent that, that like you're experiencing a lot of grief and how they're dealing with it is something
Oh
else,
yeah.
you know?
No, totally. Like if my wife died, I know everyone would be like, "Hey, this gets you in therapy," and it would. I'm assuming it would take me a while before I was like, "Hey, this is your life now." Like I would need
Right.
to realize like this is real before I'd be willing to actually process it. Because I think there are some losses that are so great that your body or brain goes into like, "What's the next thing? How do I do that?
Right.
What's the next thing? How do I do that?" And once you
Yeah.
come up for air, then you're like,
Survival
"What?
mode.
Oh
Yeah.
my god, what did I just like?" Your nervous system has to calm down. You have to accept reality. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this really hurts. And you're like, yeah, it does. Let's talk. I'm here. Let's do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too because how you feel about death and how you experience a lot of the things that I get with people are this happened, um, this person died, I don't feel anything about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that's
And
real.
then yeah, and working with them and being like, that's okay. We all experience stuff differently, and having that guilt of like, am I supposed to feel
Am
something?
I a monster?
Right, yeah. That honestly, that's the question that they have.
Yeah.
And I have to talk with them and just be like, one, accept how you feel right now and accept that it doesn't impact you as much as you thought it would.
Hmm.
Maybe it does later,
Yeah.
right? But you're not some kind of monster. Like, it's just everybody process this differently,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of it when somebody dies is survival mode, right? Funeral. But like you got to get through all these things,
Hmm.
to like you said, to even come up for air. And the way that people process that, like you're right, it's fascinating, you
It is.
know, in like because people are individuals and they're unique, but there's a lot of fear around how to process it, or am I processing it
Correct.
in the correct way? That's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
am I
Oh,
doing
yeah.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
correct?
Yep. 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 I'm
You
sure
know,
there's some standard of grief that is socially acceptable that I
right,
need to live up to. I need to perform to. And then I'll be okay. And it's like, I mean, what if the death of this person didn't mean anything to you?
right,
And that just might be your reality. And to know, like, to be given the space to admit, like, this didn't mean anything to me. And, like, maybe don't say it, at the wake, don't walk
yeah.
around at the funeral.
Just want everybody to
It's
know
over now. This
I don't
doesn't mean,
care.
this means nothing to me. There's some social constructs there, but it is, I feel like some people have really rough relationships with their parents. And there is that moment where, like, hey, your dad died. And it's like, I didn't feel anything because I felt so disconnected from him. And then a year later, it's like, oh God, I miss my dad. And it's like, and
Right.
then you have to deal with you have to process all that. Also, of like, how is it this? I mean, Carrie and Lowell by Sufjan Stevens is like one of my favorite albums ever because it's him just dissecting my mom was my mom, but God, she wasn't a good mom. And how the hell do I
Right.
deal with this?
Just interesting enough, kind of going back to musical catharsis, was I was very close with my grandma. She passed away like, I don't know, like probably like 12 years ago at this point. But during COVID, it had already been like 5 or 6 years, maybe even more than that at that point. And I started writing a song, and some of that came out, and I just started bawling like
Yeah.
in the middle of writing the song.
Yeah.
And I was like, that, like, these things come out in waves, right? And some people are scared that they're going to forget and they're just going to be gone. And it's like, no, it sneaks his way, and like embrace it when it happens, because that's you processing,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And I don't know. And we all have really unique ways and connections to people. Some people feel just so much relief,
Yeah. Yep.
right? Whether that could be because that parent was abusive, it could be because they saw that person suffering so much,
Correct. Yep.
that there's a relief that comes with
Yeah.
that.
Do you ever read any Frederick Bachman books? He did like Men
I
Called
don't know.
Ove. Okay. His last book is called Good Friends. It's about like four friends who are like best friends and then later on in life. I'm giving a spoiler if you haven't read the book, blah, blah, blah. One of the characters.
Time to read books.
That's true. Yeah. One of the characters, whenever he was a kid, his dad was physically abusive and beat him
Yeah.
a lot. And by the end of the book, you catch up with that character, and actually he's become good friends with his dad. He understands his dad and is there for his dad's last moments. And it does this like really fascinating, full encompassing of like, he was awful to him whenever he was a kid, and how that relationship can look different whenever you're older, not justifying physical abuse in any way. But I think that is some people's reality of, my dad was a monster whenever I was a kid, and we came to terms once he became old and sick. And
Yeah.
that's whenever I saw different sides of him. And I'm just like, how long life is and how many
Right.
different versions of each other that we all get to experience is just be kinder. That's basically all I come back to.
Yeah, I think some good movies that deal with that is, I think, like Big Fish.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Deals with that. And
Yep.
then the one with Tom Hanks that's about Mr. Rogers.
Oh yeah. I can't think of the name of it.
Yeah, it's something about a neighborhood.
Yeah. Won't you be my neighbor? I'm sure it's something
Won't you be
like
my
that.
neighbor?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think those are, it's complicated. Relationships
Yeah.
are complicated.
There.
Yeah.
I find them fascinating.
They are.
Okay. So normally how in an episode is ask 5 questions in the episode. First question is, did you have any backup names for your kids? Like, do you have any names you almost named them?
Oh, a ton. A ton.
Okay. Do you remember any of them?
Oh, yeah. So Ellis is Elbel. Hey, those, we have a lot. I'm blanking on them now. Elbel. Silas, we've got more for. So Silas, Psy Guy, Siley Bear. I think that's the ones that I can remind myself of quickly right now off the top of my head. But they just kind of flow out, right?
That's awesome.
Type of thing. So I just don't want anybody to call Ellis Smellis. That's the only thing that
They will now. I'm going to send you a Christmas card that says, to Jeremy, Silas, wife's name, and Smellis. Okay. Next question. Who's your favorite TV or movie dad?
No, Frank Costanza, by far. Like,
for the rest of us.
Yeah. Just by far. He's so absurd.
Yeah.
And I love Seinfeld with a passion.
Yeah.
I just find hilarious. Like, he's so absurd, and he's so frank, no pun intended, about everything. And it's just like, you can see the psyche of George through that relationship.
Yes, you can.
And I think it's brilliant. Yeah.
Did you have? I always had jealousy for that actor because he went from that doing what, like Kings of Queens, whatever. He then made a career of being a crotchety old dad.
Right.
Every role he got, and I'm like, man, what a great life. Jerry Stiller, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What, like, his career then became, I'm going to be the angry old man in every single room. What a
and
gift.
What's super funny too is that when you look at some of the Seinfeld documentaries, his halting way of speaking was simply him trying to remember the next line.
So it wasn't comedic timing?
Yeah. He was very nervous and would like apologize about it, but it's mostly him just hitting the lines as they come to him.
And Jerry, another thing.
Exactly. It's hilarious. Yeah.
That's so good. Okay, next question. What's your go-to replacement curse word? Whenever you're around your kids, you want to say a curse word because you stubbed your toe. What do you say instead of the curse word? Or do you say the curse word?
I think I say it like absentmindedly when it happens. Probably like frig and
Friggin' frig.
yeah, exactly. My friends used to make fun of me in high school because they were. I went to private school. I was in like in a Christian school and stuff like that. And I went to public school, and those were all like the bad kids,
Yeah, of course. Yes. Yep.
and so they would curse, and I'd be like, "What the frig?" And they'd be like, "What is that?
What
Like,
is frigging?
Just
Just say the
it."
word, man.
I mean, there's been a couple. My gosh, there was a time my son just dropped an F-bomb, and I was like, "Where did you learn that?"
Yeah, yeah.
And he was like, "Mommy."
Yes. That's a dad
might-
win. That is a dad win.
Like, we might want to like I was
Tone
like,
that down
you
a
know, not
little,
this.
man.
Yeah, and I had to explain why that was a bad word.
That's a great
and-
moment as
and
a
stuff
parent.
like that. Yeah, it's really funny, and being like, you don't say that at school, right? Like,
Yeah,
you've never
yeah.
said that at school.
What phone calls am I about to get here, buddy? That's very
Yeah.
true. All right, second to last question. What's like favorite kids' toy or activity? One of your favorite things to do with your sons?
Wrestle.
Yeah,
They
it's
are
fun.
very,
Yeah.
very physical. And as weird as this sounds, like sometimes I don't like having the crap beaten out of me.
Not so much.
But but it's not that. But as weird as it sounds, when I was going through all that anxiety, like there was something that was very comforting about them. It was almost like relaxing. They would kind of put a pillow over my face and like just beat me up. But I felt, I don't know, it's a really hard feeling to describe. It was a moment that I felt like I could rest
Yeah.
and be present with my kids, and they were having a good time, but it was almost this like comforting thing that happened. It's really hard to describe.
There was some form of release you felt in that felt connecting to
Yeah.
your sons. I don't know the
Yeah.
hell to explain. I know what you're talking about. We're like, I'm
Yeah.
kind of tired, pillow in my face. You guys think it's funny because you're hitting the pillow and not me. But also there's a
I'm just
physical
gonna
action that makes me
I'm
in
just
tune with
gonna
my
lay here.
body. And
Yeah.
this is
It's
all
a
real
love-
messed up.
It's a love hate. But you know, at some point they're not gonna do it.
No, they won't.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what I have to kind of like remind myself, you know.
My
I'm
oldest
a jungle
is,
gym and a punching bag at
Yes.
the same time.
my oldest is 9, and I think she already weighs like 70, 75 pounds, something like that. And like, it's hard for me to carry her anymore. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like a casual thing to pick up. And she's already like 4 foot. So like picking up a 4-foot human who's like a real person, as opposed to like my 4-year-old who still weighs like 30 pounds, is like, oh, this is easy. But like with her, I'm like, hey, just so you know, like if you run in and wrestle while your 2 younger siblings do also, you have the ability to actually hurt me. And I just want to make sure you know.
Right. Just, I mean, like for me, one of the things in working with children when I was doing more therapy, like something that my professor kind of really instilled in us was like, you have to learn how to play.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to
That's
play
fair.
again.
Yep.
So we had one day where he's like, we're going to go outside. You guys are going to play hopscotch. We've got hula hoops.
That's fun.
You guys are just going to play, you know? And my wife will be like, you're the play guy. You know how to
Yeah.
connect in that way. And I'm like, it's fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
us as adults, you have to relearn how to play.
You do.
And that's awesome,
Yeah, it is.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think dads get a lot of that, right? You kind of get like we're the physical,
Yeah.
more
And-
type, you know
yeah.
what I mean?
Very
yeah.
much so.
I
Okay.
think there's something inherent about that.
I think so too. Last question.
Yeah.
What's
These
your
are great, by the way.
What's your least favorite kids show? Like your kids start to watch it and you're like, this is crap. I'm leaving the room.
Oh my God. There's so many.
It's hard to choose one.
It depends on whether or not it was their kid, like when they were younger or currently.
Whenever I say right now, what TV show do you hate that your kids watch? What comes to mind?
They switch around so much on them, but they watch Garfield sometimes, like the newer Netflix Garfield. and
Yeah.
it is garbage. Like it is straight garbage. It's weird, and it's like I watched Garfield and Friends when I was a kid.
Yeah, same.
You
Yeah.
know, and it is so bizarre. And I'm just like, guys, really? Yeah, I'll be like, if you're watching this right now, like I'm out.
I'm
Yeah.
done. I'm
It
out.
is a garbage show.
It is. And then I feel like that's whenever I'll like check my phone the entire time and they'll be like, why aren't you watching? And I'm like, you know what this is.
Right.
You
right.
know what you want, and I get to not pay attention to something for a bit.
When they were younger, I wanted to blow my brains out when Cocomelon came on.
Cocomelon's the worst, man. It's so bad for your kids. Like, it's the worst.
Yeah, it's the worst. And then there was like Baby Shark videos or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember taking a picture and like posting it online. I was like, at what point did these adults make a decision in their life that they were like, I want to run around in a shark costume and dance? Like, like
that's right.
It seems, no, there's money, right?
Yeah, that's why I make my kids like, I'll let them buy their favorite albums on vinyl so that they can't skip,
awesome.
so they can't skip songs. Because because like that's why I hate like Baby Shark and a lot of TV kids music is most of the songs are 45 seconds long. So like you don't sit in them, like you don't rest in them at all. You just move on to the next thing. And I'm like, no part of me feels healthy if I just jump from one thing to the next. Now imagine you're 3. That's not good.
Right.
That's not good for any of us.
Yes, absolutely. Hey man, thank you so much. I enjoyed all those questions and I enjoyed our conversation a lot.
Yep. I'll follow
Keep in
up
touch.
with you
I know you're a busy guy.
Yeah, man. You too. And see you next time, Jeremy. All right.
All right, man. Thank you.
Bye. Yep.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the episode. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the Imperfect Dads Podcast. And make sure to give us 5 stars wherever you listen to us. Music, editing, and production is all done by me. Make sure to tune in on Mondays and most Thursdays for new episodes. This podcast is part of the Never a Face Network. Make sure to go to neverafacенetwork.com to learn more about them.